Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today's topic is going to be about the further oral activity, or in other words, the FOA. Now, considering the FOA is worth about 10-15% of your final grade, it's important to realize how to present effectively and to really maximize your potential for grades because it's weighted quite heavily. 10-15% could mean the difference between a 6 and a 7, so you really want to make sure that you ideally ace it the first time instead of doing multiple FOAs throughout the year and sacrificing a lot of study time for your other subjects towards perfecting something that should have been done really well the first time. So let's get into the factors that contribute to a great FOA. One of the main contributing factors to a well-executed FOA is the content itself and how well you know the content. So when I was doing my FOA, I had a choice between the part 1 and part 2 of the course. So part 1 was the language and cultural context aspect. Part 2 was the language and mass communication part of the course. We didn't really focus on parts 3 and 4 because that had to do with literature and the critical study of the literature that we were doing. So back to my point, because I was doing mass communication, I chose to do mass communication at least, I decided to focus on mediums of communication. So things like Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Vine at the time was very popular as well. That's how old I am. So what I ended up doing was choosing Vine and analyzing the Viner known as Just Rain and analyzing how he portrayed a stereotypical Indian accent or an Indian individual versus a Caucasian male. Now, what I thought was interesting in the way he used the language was that there were a lot of, obviously, errors and grammatical speech impediments with the Indian character that this Viner portrayed, whereas the Caucasian individual that he was also portraying was more refined and more developed in that sense. So it was very interesting for me to analyze this because when you're analyzing the language, it's not just the English that you're focusing on the broader spectrum. So what are the implications, for example, of this Viner portraying two different individuals from different cultures, so you can build a link between the cultural context. So you see what I'm doing here? I'm kind of taking an aspect and developing on the idea. I focus on the language and then I move on to what those implications are. So the Caucasian male, he's got a very good pronunciation of English, he knows how to grammatically be correct, whereas the individual that is portrayed by Just Rain as an Indian is grammatically incorrect, has very fragmented sentence structures, and is portrayed as being somewhat illiterate. So you have to go from there and kind of work backwards. So English is sort of the end result, and then you're working backwards from there. Now that was just one instance. That was one of my FOAs. The other FOA I did was the Twitter FOA. So I would take some tweets from various celebrities or people that were well known in the world, and then I would kind of break them down. So what does each individual word mean? What was happening at that time? Why did this individual respond in such a way and choose those certain English terms? So this is where my analysis is kind of getting into thought. It's kind of formulating, and I'm really trying to pick apart my analysis. And if you did that in your FOA and showed that you really went in depth, not just with the language, but with the implications of such language, then that would obviously mean a higher grade, as opposed to someone who took a look at the language and said, oh, well, clearly he's grammatically incorrect because he didn't use a full stop here, or lack of punctuation here. There is more to English analysis than just the letters and the language itself that's being used. So that is a critical aspect that you need to really develop on as you move up to the stage of presenting your FOA. So moving away from the first critical factor, we're going to be talking about the second part of your FOA, which is the actual physical presentation. Now I'm going to be taking into consideration the variables of whether you do it alone, your FOA, or whether you do it with a group. Now, if you do it alone, then you've obviously got a lot more time for yourself to present. You have to consider the fact that you will need the endurance and stamina to present for a full 10-15 minutes, depending on how much your teacher has given you as far as time goes. And if you're in a group, you're kind of time constrained because you all need to contribute some part of the FOA, and it all has to be a very good analysis, but you don't want to kind of give too much time to one person, otherwise the FOA might seem unbalanced. So if you want a full list of advantages and drawbacks of working alone or working in a group, I've listed them on the FOA article that I wrote on studynova.com. I'll put a link in the description, so head over there if you want to take a look at that list. So moving away from that is the actual physical presentation. So how are you actually presenting yourself, and then as a consequence the presentation? Are you, for example, looking at the audience, staying engaged? Are you confident? Are you speaking loudly and clearly? Are you pronouncing things correctly, or are you stuttering and mumbling? Are your hands kind of, like what I'm doing now, kind of animated, or are they crossed or to your side? Those are some factors that you need to consider when doing your FOA, because you might have a very meager kind of analysis, but you can really present it in a way that you know what you're talking about. So as you can tell, presentation technique is arguably as important as your core analysis of the FOA. If you're unable to effectively communicate your point across to your peers and your teacher, there's really no point in having the best FOA that the world has ever seen as your presentation, right? So that's really the core components of a great FOA. First of all, your content and how well you understand and analyze your content, whether you're working in a group or working alone, and how well your dynamic is played out in the presentation, and then your own presentation technique, if you're clear, all the factors that I spoke about earlier. So hopefully in this video you've learned, or at least you've been able to see how important each component is. I look forward to making more videos in the future. If you're looking for more tips and tricks, head over to studynova.com and check out the articles that have been written by me, as well as some of the other course materials that are available on our website. That's it for me. I'll catch you guys in the next video.